Hey you, everything alright?
Oh, I'm alright, but the treasure, it's on the other side of this guy, and this is the only way through. Hey guys, Centurion here. Welcome to ESO Vault. I'm back on my live account, and the last time out I said I was going to take a look at some builds with more interesting gear. And more interesting does unfortunately mean hard to get. More damage, but hard to get. Now this does go against one of the 3 R's, and that's readily available gear, but I think it's important to mix things up so the channel doesn't get into a rut. So with that, let's take a look at today's character. I'm starting with my main character, and he's a Stamina Dragonknight. Let's go ahead and dig into the character sheet.
Alright, but can we do it fast?
What? Yeah, it'll be quick. Look, the treasure's not going anywhere. Just keep an eye on the horses, especially the cart horse. You're responsible for him while we're out here. Here on the character sheet, you can see this is an Imperial. I did a lot of tanking on this character years ago, and I guess I figured that was a good race for it, and I never bothered to change his race after that. Imperial doesn't really have much to help a stamina damage dealer though. I'll put the top stamina DPS races up for you in case you want one that can actually help you do more damage. I play a lot of stamina characters, and that's reflected in the content of the channel, but I mix in some Magicka characters now and then to keep it interesting. My buff food is lava foot soup and salt rice, and that's typical. But I do actually use a different food in the fight which bookends the contents of this video. For that fight I'm using Artaeum Takeaway Broth, and that's a good go-to when you need more health but can get by with less sustain. Artaeum Takeaway Broth also has a bonus to health recovery, but that's not something anybody pays attention to except with certain niche setups. Usually in my stable of characters, the only one that I use high health recovery on is my Warden. Moving on, you can see that I have the Thief Mundus Stone, and that's what you should use on a damage dealer character you're running dungeons with. My health is at 20,000 and my stamina is at 30,000. Stamina recovery is on the low end at 1,300, and I would caution that you try to always be at or above that. Any less than that on a 2-bar build could make things tough unless your character is really thrifty. Weapon damage is at 4,400 and critical is at 44%, and those are pretty average unbuffed values. And it's important to make that distinction because in combat those numbers are all subject to change. Potions and other things kick in and those numbers go up. I'm not going to talk about penetration. If you find yourself in a score-pushing trials group out on that bleeding edge of competitive gameplay, you can look into that. Until then, I don't want you to worry about that. At least not in PvE. If you find yourself in Cyrodiil, you can start worrying about how you're going to come up with more penetration. Okay, let's move on to the skills. Look at that. That's the Ayleid well that Breton was talking about right before he died. We're close. Although this is a 2-bar build, you don't actually have to do any light attack weaving with this setup. That's because of a specific piece of gear I'm wearing, and some of you will know what that is instantly. But in fact, I do weave in light attacks when I run this. It would throw me off more to not weave than to just go ahead and do it. There's no point in doing it here, but I can always use the practice. And generally, most 2-bar builds are going to need some light attack weaving, even if it's only to proc a monster helm. I'm going to start with the skills on my back bar, and that's because that's where I start my static rotation. And I'm going to do something new this time. Over on the right, I'm going to show the armory system display of the skills. First up is the Dragonknight skill, Flames of Oblivion. This skill launches a fireball at 3 enemies every 5 seconds. Because it comes from the Ardent Flame skill line, it also generates a stack of Seething Fury, increasing my weapon damage. More on that in a minute. I should have mentioned that my back bar weapon is a 2-handed sword. Now I'm going to use the 2-handed skill Stampede. This powerful gap closer creates a ground AoE that does bleed damage to enemies in the area. It also increases my weapon damage when the sword has the infused trait and a weapon damage glyph. Uptime on this continues even when I swap to my other bar as long as the skill is active and an enemy is in the area. And I know I bore some of you guys when I bring this up, but not everyone's been playing the game for 10 years, and that information is important enough that I really like to mention it in every 2-bar build video. Okay, next I use the skill Noxious Breath. This is another Ardent Flame ability, so I'm generating another stack of Seething Fury and increasing my weapon damage again. This skill does great damage over time and reduces the armor of enemies in the area by applying Major Breach. To me, this is the best skill in the Dragonknight's kit. The next skill I'm going to use is Eruption. This Scorching Cloud of Ash is a ground-based attack that comes from the Earth and Heart skill line. Because it's an Earth and Heart skill, I get the minor brutality buff for using it, and so do any other players I'm grouped with. This buff increases weapon damage by 10% and is unique to the Dragonknight. Next is my Self-Heal, Resolving Vigor, and this comes from the Assault skill line. Some of you may wonder why I don't use the DK healing skill Dragon's Blood, and the main reason I don't is because it uses Magicka. And if you find yourself in a situation where you have to spam your self-heal, it needs to draw from your main resource. Last on this bar is my ultimate, which is Standard in Might. This is an expensive but powerful ultimate which does damage in a circular area. This does flame damage to enemies, increases my damage done by 15%, and reduces my damage taken by 15%. As if that wasn't enough, allied players can use the Shackle synergy to deal additional damage. Okay, let's look at my front bar, which is dual wield daggers. The first skill I use is Venomous Claw, which is a single target skill from the Ardent Flame skill line. That's one more stack of Seething Fury. How many is that? I lost track. This skill instantly applies the poison status effect and does increasing damage over time. Now I use Deadly Cloak from the dual wield skill line, a great area damage skill that offers me protection from the same type of damage. Now I use one of the new scribe skills, Magic Knife. My custom version of this skill does instant magic damage, gives me Minor Berserk, and activates the Ruffian passive. Minor Berserk increases all damage by 5%, and Ruffian increases dual wield damage by 15%. And it's no coincidence that I use this skill right before I start in with my spammable attack, Rapid Strikes. Rapid Strikes is a channeled dual wield skill that does great single target damage. I'll use this skill 8 times before swapping to my other bar. Next, you can see I have the Ardent Flame ability, Molten Whip, and it's slotted because that's where I'm getting those stacks of Seething Fury. I don't use the skill. But every time I use an Ardent Flame ability, I get 100 extra weapon damage, and it can stack 3 times. So that's 300 extra weapon damage just for slotting this. Last on this bar is the Fighters Guild skill, Flawless Dawnbreaker, and that's there for a passive increase to weapon damage that it provides. All these bonuses to weapon damage work especially well on a Dragonknight because of their unique minor brutality bonus. Alright, that's it for both bars. How about a fight with this knucklehead so you can see the skills in action? So the build did 60,000 points of damage per second, and that's more than enough to do whatever you want to do in the game as a DPS. Although I feel like using the Dragonknight standard in such a short fight is cheesing it a little, but even so, the damage is up there. If you look up in the green numbers, you'll see that I had 3 stacks of Seething Fury over 90% of the time thanks to passively slotting Molten Whip. And that's actually way more than 300 weapon damage, especially with the DK Minor Brutality buff. Always try to get that Minor Brutality in there when you're running a Dragonknight. It's basically free damage. Okay, since you can already see what the gear is if you read the combat metrics chart, let's go ahead and look at the gear. This is it. Let's see if we can find an entrance. I think I can get us in here.
I'm learning a lot by being around you. I think Magister Irin would be proud.
Now before I get into the gear, I want to say that I'm not necessarily recommending that you run out and farm this stuff. This gear is not super easy to get and is presented here largely for entertainment purposes and to keep things from getting stale around here. But having said that, you've already seen that the build is pretty effective. The first 5-piece set I'm wearing is Runecarver's Blaze, and that comes out of the Scrivener's Hall dungeon. Runecarver's Blaze adds fire damage to damage over time skills. This is especially effective on a Dragonknight because of their bonus to fire damage and all of their dots. Scrivener's Hall can be pretty difficult though, and this farm will get even more difficult because you'll have to get daggers and jewelry. This is a light armor set, so you'll want to get it to where you'll need only 1 piece of light armor. My main hand dagger is Nirnhone with a poison damage glyph, and the offhand is charged with fire damage. My other weapon is the Maelstrom's Perfective Greatsword, and that comes from the final boss of the arena of the same name. This buffs attacks like rapid strikes, and that's why it's here on the back bar. I already mentioned that this weapon was in the infused trait and it has a weapon damage glyph. I'm wearing one piece of the Slime Crawl monster set, and that's the helm. That gives me a bonus to critical chance. My next set isn't any kind of revelation, it's one you've seen a lot on the channel, and that's Deadly Strike. Deadly Strike is known for giving a big boost to damage over time and channeled attacks, and Dragoknights are known for powerful damage over time skills. Alright, I've got one last piece of gear, and that's the Velothi Mage's Amulet. This mythic item increases damage done to monsters by 15% and provides a minor force buff, but reduces light attack damage to nothing. If your light attack weaving is anything like mine, this can be a worthwhile trade-off. One of the leads for this item comes from the Scrivener's Hall dungeon. You'll have to gather keys to unlock chests in the trophy vault at the end. All my jewelry is in the Bloodthirsty trait with weapon damage glyphs. My armor is all medium except for one light piece, and all the traits are divines. Each piece also has a stamina enchantment. Alright, that's it for the gear on this one. Well, there it is. That's a lot of treasure. Good thing we brought that card along this trip. The blue champion points on this one are Fighting Finesse, Deadly Aim, Thaumaturge, and Wrathful Strikes. Well, that's it for today's Dragonknight build, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, help me out with the algorithm by hitting the like button, and if you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already subscribed. I've got the usual fashion show at the end, followed by a fight. The fight is with a new boss from Gold Road, and you saw a little of that at the beginning of the video. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and enjoy your adventures in Tamriel. Hey, Ember.
Am I in trouble? Sorry, I just always assume.
Well, that depends. Where's the cart horse?